Good evening. We're going to start in just a moment. In order to keep things moving, if you do wish to speak tonight, you do need to fill out a blue card over by Ms. Garastina, and she'll make sure that we get them over the course of the meeting. And we'll start in just about a minute. If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the Board of Education meeting on February 8th, 2023? Dr. Liu, second. Ms. Napolitano, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Items 4, 5, 6, and 7 are FYI items. If nobody has any other questions regarding them, we will move on. Great, thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the salary changes? Mr. Melnick, second. Ms. Napolitano, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's report for January of 2023? Ms. Widman, second. Dr. Luce, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Good evening. I'd like to offer a big thank you to the McVeigh PTA and Bowling Green PTA for inviting me in to read to their students for Guest Reader Day. I enjoyed reading to Mr. Triumfo's 4th grade class, Mrs. Harmon's 1st grade class, and Mrs. Graney's 4th grade class. I am looking forward to reading to Parkway and Meadowbrook classes in the coming days. As most of you are aware, there was a story that broke today from Project Veritas regarding Assistant Superintendent David Casamento. As a public school district that proudly serves 7,400 students in a diverse community, East Meadow remains committed to its work in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and promoting a culture of understanding and tolerance among all students. This work is necessary and integral in ensuring that our students are prepared to enter a world that is incredibly diverse. In terms of the district's hiring practices, we have a strict protocol that was developed by a diverse group of stakeholders within our district. This protocol includes evaluation of candidates by a team of district employees to ensure fairness throughout the process. In the interest of transparency, I'm requesting a public review of our hiring process to be presented in the public meeting on 3/22, which will also include a review of our evaluative rubric. While we believe that our hiring practices are sound and completely above board, we feel that a public review is necessary given the situation at hand. In addition, we will also be conducting a thorough investigation into this matter. You want to move?
Yep. As some of you may have seen, the State Comptroller's Office released the audit they completed on the district for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2022. The purpose of an audit is to examine the entirety of the organization's financial statements, controls, and operations. During the period of the audit, the district's budget averaged $215 million per year, or over the course of the entire audit period, the review of approximately $860 million. To put this in perspective, the auditors found that the district did not budget for approximately $1.1 million in custodial overtime for this period, the equivalent of 0.12% of the budgeted period.
The New York State Comptroller conducts audits as part of the office's responsibility and selects the districts to be audited randomly. There was nothing that caused the district to be audited. However, the district, as required by law, is transparent, and the district's records are and were for this audit readily available to the auditors to inspect.
The audit did not conclude that there was an unnecessary, unwarranted, or excessive expense, solely that funds for this were not budgeted ahead of time. This is particularly important given that the time frame at issue was during the pandemic. It was impossible for the board or any other school organization to budget for overtime expenses for a number of reasons. First, the 2020-2021 budget was approved and presented to the community for vote in June of 2020. This is well before the state provided procedures and regulations on how schools would be opening for the school year in question. Secondly, it is during the time that custodians were required to complete additional duties that were not pre-pandemic part of their everyday procedures. This includes daily disinfecting of classrooms, and particularly those where a COVID-positive student, teacher, or staff member had been located. Lastly, with all of these additional daily tasks, the custodial staff, who were then and are always remarkable, were subject to quarantining if they were in the presence of someone who tested positive, but also dealing with their own COVID-positive illnesses themselves and within their families, and, unfortunately, the loss of staff and their family members during the COVID pandemic.
We rely on the custodial staff to prepare our schools not only for opening in September, but for the year-round cleanliness and upkeep of our facilities and buildings, and they do a tremendous job of doing so. We as a board cannot stress enough our gratitude to our custodial staff, not only during the period of COVID, but before and continually after.
It should be noted that while the auditors provided that the overtime was legitimate and necessary, the overtime payable was not actually paid from budgeted funds, but rather the district utilized funds from the CARES Act that were specifically provided by the federal government for COVID-related expenses such as these.
We would also like to make the community aware of the fact that in 2018-2019, after studying custodial overtime, the board felt that the overtime numbers were greater than necessary, and after reviewing with the superintendent and assistant superintendent for business, the board put limits in place related to overtime. As a result of the board crackdown, there was a sharp decrease in custodial overtime the following year, resulting in the actual overtime paid being almost exactly what was budgeted.
Ultimately, the greatest responsibility of a board is to act as fiduciaries for the district's funds. The board and administration is constantly looking at its budgeting process to ensure that we forecast as close to actual as possible. While it is not our desire to be randomly chosen for an audit, we do welcome another set of eyes to review our procedures, and we can confidently say that if the only item found by the Comptroller's Office in a fine-tooth comb study of 4 years of our records was that during the pandemic, for which it would be impossible to plan, we did not budget for the necessary and appropriate overtime during that period.
We can proudly take away from this report that the board, administration, and district are working well and with the best interest of our community and taxpayers in mind, and that the district is in exceptional financial standing. Dr. Card?
Thank you, and good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Board of Education. Happy Women's History Month. Over the past few days, I attended the New York State Council of School Superintendents Annual Winter Institute in Albany, where this year's theme was The Road to Awesome: Empower, Lead, and Change the Game, which is based on the work in a book with the same title by Darren Peppard, a former superintendent from the Midwest. Several educational sessions were offered to inform leaders across the state of several issues that included state finances and state aid to education, working with the media to influence policymakers, the state of student mental health and wellness, and the fiscal and political outlook for our public schools. On Tuesday, New York State Education Commissioner Dr. Betty Rosa and Deputy Commissioner Dr. James Baldwin discussed several important issues that are currently under study with the Board of Regents, which included a recently released report on discipline and pre-K special education funding. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate two students who won Awards of Excellence in Film Production in the PTA Reflections Competition. Vincent Softo from Bowling Green and Aaron Ambachin from Clark Middle School. Both students will, thank you. Both students will now advance to the National PTA Reflections Round with their Awards of Excellence standing. Good luck to Vincent and Aaron. Congratulations to the following students on their accomplishments. From Clark High School, boys winter track county champions for the second year in a row. Wrestler Justin Sariano, first ever at Clark High School to win a Nassau County championship in Division I and Division II, and competed in the New York State wrestling competitions. Congratulations on jobs well done. From East Meadow High School, Owen Mao placed 7th in the 200 freestyle and 3rd at the 500 freestyle at the boys swimming at the New York State Championships. Zariah Hall and Caitlin Coffey competed in the girls' indoor New York State track competitions, or championships, excuse me. Matthew Rodriguez, Matthew Coffey, and Joseph Arbitello competed in the New York State Wrestling Championships. Amanda Morris will be competing at the New York State Bowling Championships on March 10th. A round of applause for all of our wonderful East Meadow High School students. And lastly, tonight, Dr. Pizzo will provide an overview of our spending plan, focusing on benefits, debt service, fund transfers, and capital expenditures. As a reminder, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 22nd, where we will have another budget presentation on staffing and instruction for the 2023-2024 school year, along with the board's budget adoption consideration. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Baruch.
That brings us to our first public commentary period. As a matter of notice, the Board of Education chooses to hold 2 public commentary periods during our board meetings, the first of which is solely for items that are on the agenda. This allows the board to hear from the community prior to voting on a specific item. Our public commentary periods are 30 minutes in length, and if you filled out a blue card, you will have 3 minutes to speak. If after everybody who wishes to speak has spoken and there's still time left in the 30 minutes, we would invite you back up if you still have something left to say for an additional 3 minutes. As a reminder, the public commentary period is not a back and forth or a question and answer period. If there are any questions that you might have, somebody will follow up with you in the coming days. It would be the appropriate person so that you can have answers provided. I have 2 cards that are specifically for the first public commentary, and as a reminder, they must be about items on the agenda. We will start with Mr. Tempone.
How's everybody doing today? Everybody
Good, how about you?
Had a trying day, I would imagine. I missed the card. So the question is, and it's about the budget, because we're going to talk about the budget today. What are you going to allocate for the legal ramifications that are going to happen from the discriminatory hiring practices, lawsuits that you're going to see? Because several teachers that I know that I've spoken to throughout the course of the day have said that if they applied for and didn't receive a job here because of, for whatever reason they were given, they would probably sue for discriminatory hiring practices. Now, you may not think that there's merit to those cases. There may not be, but you're still going to have to defend them. So what are we talking about as far as an allocation in the budget? Because someone turns around and sues you for $10 million for a discriminatory hiring practices, you're going to have to defend it, and I'm pretty sure the attorneys here aren't ambulance chasers. They're probably charging a pretty good amount of money an hour, right? So it's something to consider when you're kicking your budget around a little bit. I'll save the rest of my comments for the end of the time, because I have some personal comments to make. Another one I have, do I have time? I didn't go 3 minutes yet. I have another question. I don't know, I mean, I'll leave it for the 22nd, because it's more staffing. And I had a kid removed out of speech for his academics. They all told me how smart he was, and he's a brilliant kid, right, elementary school. Turned out that when we got the state test back, he scored lower this year. And unfortunately, during COVID, he had to wear a mask for speech, which was kind of silly, right? And we didn't feel that he had the appropriate amount of time. Obviously, if you have the training with a mask on and you're given speech, you don't have to be a master's degree educator to figure out that you're not going to be able to have the same training as if you didn't have a mask on, especially when you're 7, right? So how do we solve that problem going forward? Because there are certain programs that were put in place and certain things that are there that I'm sure are being funded from the budget, while taking a taxpayer that lives in the district, pays taxes in the district, and doesn't receive the services. So, and there are kids from out of the district that are receiving services, that don't live in the district or pay taxes in the district. So how does the Board of Education figure that out?
Thank you, Mr. Tempone. Ms. Tobin? I apologize. Ms. Tobin?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I was planning on being here before everything unfolded today, so I hope this doesn't get lost in the shuffle. As you know, McVeigh has added an additional 40-plus kids since the end of last school year. Sections had to be added after the start of the school year, and again, space had to be miraculously found to accommodate these students. And although you were very well aware of the spacing constraints last year that we have been facing, you once again turned a blind eye. Has McVeigh received additional funding throughout the year to support these new students? If so, where can I find that per pupil distribution? Have you reevaluated your original plan? Can you please update us on the status and timeline of the expansion? Have you updated the application to New York State to include the new enrollment numbers? And have you discussed the desperate need for more than the original plan? We sat back for a bit, assuming that our concerns were finally been taken seriously. Not only will those 2 classrooms be simply putting a Band-Aid on the problem, we are still in need of interim solutions. That was part of what we spoke about last year, was the interim solutions. Nothing has been offered to us. We are graduating our smallest class this year. What's your plan for next year before the expansion is complete? Or are you just going to wait and hope it works itself out as usual? This is the job you signed up for, and it's time you take accountability and immediate action. You cannot sit back and think that a mere approval of a 2-classroom addition means that your duty is complete. Where are the storage units? Where are the additional desks? Where are the things that our principal and administrators and teachers and students and parents are asking for? We all know that this will take a long time to execute. And you have done nothing in the interim to ease the stress of the staff, the administration, and the students of McVeigh. And as a taxpayer and involved parent who has stood in front of you hat in hand very professionally over the past year and a half, I expect answers and I expect actions. You have my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tobin.
So I think everything else is...
So I don't have any other cards for the first commentary, so the ones that we have are for the second commentary. Great, thank you. We'll move on.
Very good.
Do I need to sign the card?
Sorry, you can do the card after, but it needs to pertain to items that are on the agenda tonight. Okay, Just fill out the card after. It's not a problem.
Go to the podium.
Yeah, I'm saying you can
Go
speak
to the
now
podium.
and then fill out the card when you're done so that we can keep moving. No problem.
Good evening. My name is Kevin McKenna. I am an advocate for honest and competent government, and I'm also the founder of Nassau County NY News, which is a widely followed Facebook page and blog on the internet. This morning, you talked, and so I'm talking about something that you just talked about.
No,
You-
I'm
you-
sorry,
you
sir.
talked
It's
about
not,
a breaking
excuse me,
story
sir.
this morning.
It needs to be on the agenda for tonight.
Yeah, it is.
Anything that I speak about is not, this is not an agenda item that we're going to be taking action on tonight. That was board
I
announcements.
didn't ask if you were taking action on it tonight. Don't you believe in free speech?
I absolutely do, and I would be very happy to have you speak in the second public commentary.
I
Very,
am
very
using
happy.
my time right now in
You
the
don't
first
have the
public
time
comment
right
period.
now, sir, because it doesn't have anything to do with the agenda. We were very clear in what our first
You don't
public
even know what I'm going to say, so how could you say that I'm not
because you
speaking on
just
the agenda?
said what you were going to speak
You
about.
don't, are you a mind reader? Are you a mind
Can you
reader?
please identify what item on the agenda you're referring
Folks,
to? Excuse me?
the board would like, the public would like to know where your assistant superintendent is tonight.
This is not on the agenda.
In the spirit of transparency, you failed to state in your opening comments, where is the assistant superintendent of curriculum tonight?
He is obviously not here.
Has he been,
Thank you very much. We'll have you for the second public commentary.
has he been suspended? Is he still
He's
employed?
not here tonight, and we cannot comment on personnel
Why is he
items.
not here tonight?
Because we,
Why is he not here tonight?
because we,
Why is he not here tonight? The public would like to know.
Excuse me. Here's what I am
This
going
is
to
my
state.
time. You're
Excuse me,
using
sir.
my time.
Excuse me. We will come back to you. Here's what's going to happen this evening. We're going to have a meeting that follows appropriate decorum. If we can't do that, we will then adjourn and go into executive session. That's just the way it works.
I am going to finish my comment.
I'm sorry, sir. We're going to
No.
ask the custodian to please
I
turn
am
off
going to finish. The
the
custodian's
turn
not
off
going
the
to touch
microphone,
me.
please.
The custodian is not going to touch me. If he does,
Dr. Pizzo, if we could move into the, thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Pizzo to the podium, who will present our third series of presentations on our developing budget. Dr. Pizzo?
All right, thank you, Dr. Card. Thank you to our Board of Education for allowing me to make this third presentation. As the many residents know who follow what we're doing, we do break down every aspect of the budget and do presentations, and we have two to come after this. What we're going to cover, we already had, I know Dr. Card had already outlined, and we're going to go through some of the components. I'm going to have Joanne working with me. We're going to stay on this slide. What this slide represents is the tax levy limit. We did have a breakdown of the tax levy limit in our last presentation, and we will show that breakdown again in our revenue presentation. But I just want to make everyone aware that all of this information that we're presenting will also be available on our website, and the previous presentations are currently available on our website. So please, please check that if you missed those presentations, and we are here to answer questions in regards to anything that you may identify from there. So what our tax levy currently breaks down to is you see the figure there, and that represents the levy limit. What the levy limit is, for those who aren't familiar with this, the levy limit is what you and I, as local taxpayers, contribute to the revenue for the school district. That's approximately 69% most years in or about of our revenue here. The increase, which there's the many factors go into it at this point, based on the factors that go in, which is last year's information, this year's information, and some exclusions, we are at 2.84% over the previous levy. You do see a little check mark here that's submit to the state controller by March 1st. And of course, that's passed, and of course, we've already done that. But we do like to give you an idea of what our timeline is. Tax levy increase greater than that number, that $4.1 million plus dollars, would require a supermajority of 60%, which that's not something that we look to do. We don't look to go above the cap. Okay, here's again a breakdown of some of the areas we're going to cover. I'm not going to just read off the slides to you, but again, all of this information will be presented and captured on our website. So here's really a breakdown financially of where we are. What we like to do is to show the last full actual, 21-22, the estimated actual for this current year that we're in. And we do look at the budgetary numbers and do a projection going forward. And as you see here, that we are projecting a slight decrease overall in this area. And that really gets into some of the areas where we're having a savings. We don't anticipate having a tax anticipation note needed this year. So we do have a savings of a couple of $100,000 there. At this point, we're about $400,000 down. That is something that we need for cash flow, which we don't need at this point. We are having, our interest rates on our debt service is excellent, and we did capture some savings from ERS that you'll see as we go forward. Right on to the next slide. And you can see that 11.6% that we're looking at, that is down from the previous year, which was 16.5. The way this works is this is for our this is for the staff members we have outside of the teaching and the professional staff, and we get assessed the percentage on our cost in that area for the salaries of those people. And as you can see, this going down means we pay less. But keep in mind, we're paying less on a growing number as you do have changes as people advance in their careers. Next, always like to have a little bit of a chart to kind of represent this. You can see the little arrow and the trend. So we have that there, and we try to exhibit what's gone on, not just from this year to last, but giving you kind of a range of what's going on. Okay, and here's the dollar breakdown. As you can see, we have a good break here for us. This is advantageous to us, so that is shared there. And next, okay, here are TRS rates, and you're showing that the next year, that 9.76 is what we're projecting. If you can go ahead, and there's a breakdown of many years. And you can see we also gained an advantage of the rate we're being assessed decreasing for TRS. That's, again, the professionals that we have. And you can see here's the long-range trend. It does go up and down based on the market conditions. It's reflected years later. So you can see a little bit of a savings there, which is good news. But overall, with the code going up, you're going to see where we go from there. So you can see we're pretty much flat here for the teachers' retirement system change from year to year. Keep going. Social Security, we think that we could maybe be a little bit lighter here next year, which would be an advantage. But when we do the final budget presentation, the final budget is presented to the Board of Education on the 22nd. We're still looking, and this is an area that's close that we're going to be looking at very closely. Okay, workers' compensation. We're also looking at staying flat here, so it would be no increase. Okay, life insurance. Okay, there's another one I have flat for now, but we're going to keep a close eye on this. We do project with our carriers to see where we are. We always make sure we get the right rates, the best rates possible, but we're going to keep a close eye on that. Unemployment insurance. You can see this is a little bit strange here. You see this year you see us up higher. That's an anomaly. So I do think that with the budget of $65,000 that we've had for a couple of years, we should be fine for next year. Okay, disability insurance, we're looking at keeping that flat. There is a little bit of room here, but that is always within a budget. We're not doing zero-based budgeting. So I think that we're comfortable at this point. We're presenting this for the board's consideration. Okay, the next. There's an interesting code, as you can see from the actual, and you can see it where we're estimated, but then you see a jump going up. What we're doing here is we did with our bargain, we did settle with our bargaining units, and there were some changes to the dental, and so we did want to have a little bit of a change there to capture that. Now the question may be on that, well, that's more money that you're spending, and there was a contract negotiated. When we negotiate the contracts, we do value that, and that is part of the negotiation. So that is something that is a part of the give and take when we negotiate with the units. Okay, some other codes you could see we're looking at staying flat here as well. Okay, with debt service. Okay, here's a change in debt service. Debt service, this is where we're capturing the bond payments, the energy performance contract payments. We also have some other items here in regards to the assessment for BOCES. That is a piece of our cap calculation. We do have a slight increase here. Let me explain this. Last year, we had a partial payment for our energy performance contract. This year, we're going to have a full payment for the energy performance contract. So that is really where the change is coming from. It was completely anticipated. We did want to start our debt service on that energy performance contract last year, but we will have that full payment this year, and that's why this adjustment is there. Okay, here is a slight change again. This is something that you're going to see as we go forward on the future slides. This is where we capture the capital and some other areas, and we do have a slight change in capital. That's why you see that change of $200,000, which you'll see as we go forward. Okay, we have, this is where our budget increase is now currently, 4.06. We do have that tax increase, which is the levy increase. Same thing, is at 2.87. We do also have here really a breakdown, and I wanted to share this for full transparency. We had a very astute question from our board president in regards to a similar slide that I did previously, and I really wanted to break this down. And in the previous slide, and it was reflected in what we posted on the website, had all of the columns listed. I wanted to focus in. It makes it a little bit more confusing with everything here, but everything is here. If you go on the website and you look at our last presentation or look at this presentation when it's posted, if you have a question, very happy to speak with you and delve into the details. But what this really defines here is looking at the prime mover of revenue for us is the levy. The levy, as I said before, is 69% in or about, on or about each year. So what we do is to really kind of focus in on the budget, we do as part of this slide, is we show what if we only increase the budget by the levy? Because that's something that we could rely on, that we know what it is, that we have some level of control over. It's capped, of course, but we do have a level of control up to that cap. Where would we be? Because the state, we've had better times recently in the fully funding of foundation aid, which is part of an agreement that was from 2008, was finally acted on. So we're doing better with state aid. I know you see that in the paper, and that's good news, but that goes in cycles. We've had times where state aid went up, and then it was recaptured back when there were tough times. And we do have some financial concerns coming up, so we do want to really keep an eye on that revenue budget. Keep in mind, you can't look at an expense budget without looking at a revenue budget. You have to look at both sides. So we have to project forward as to what we anticipate with revenue, and this is one of the mechanisms we use. You do see that difference. That is addressed by savings out of the budget from the previous year, which is fund balance, which is applied moving forward. We try to be efficient. We try to come in under the budget. We are very stringent in regards to what purchases we make. We make sure we get full value for our purchases, and money that is remaining at the end is refunded to the taxpayers via funding that is moved forward for the next year's budget. And that is an amount that would work well for us, not only for this year, but also in regards to our long-range planning. No budget is done just looking at 1 year. We're looking at this 1 year, but also looking at 3, 5, 10 years down the road. We often do projections of 8 to 10 years based on different possibilities in regards to tough decisions that are made. So we are looking at it very closely, and I think this works very well with that long-term plan. Okay, here's a contingency budget. We have had our budgets approved, and we're usually approved by a very wide margin. Thank you for the partnership that we've had with the community. I believe it goes back just about 40 years now. But we are required to show you the aspects of a contingency budget. This is fact-based. We must provide this, and these are the numbers in regards to what would need to be removed from a budget if we did have a contingency budget. So here it is for informational purposes. Any questions, please call. I'd be happy to go into greater detail. We also like to break out the capital expenditures for you. It's very important what we're doing with the facilities in regard to addressing our needs. These needs are put together from information from our building leaders, principals, and other administrators in the building who provide input. Our facilities department, which does an excellent job. Our architect, our 5-year plan, which is generated by the architect, and really historic information that's carried through from year to year. So a lot goes into capital expenditures. It's something that we have input from all types of areas. And we have a lot of different projects here. As you can see, we're going through, and I know you're not going to be able to see this. I couldn't get this, make it that we could have it clear, but everything will be on the website. And again, please call. I'd love to speak with anyone who has a question. But if you go to the next slide, we do have all of our buildings addressed to one extent or the other. Needs are never going to be equal, but I think that the attention that we give, we look to equalize. And we're looking at a total of $1.8 million. Last year's budget for capital was $2 million, so that ties into that $200,000 we saw in that previous slide. So spoiler alert there that I gave away before. And here's the upcoming budget meetings. We do have instructional staff at our next meeting. I will be doing that revenue presentation that I promised earlier. And we are looking at that point to have the budget ready for submission to our Board of Education for their consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Pizzo. I have a question, if you don't mind. I really thank you for that slide. If we could just go back to it, if you don't mind. The draft versus tax levy limit budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So the $5,000, let me try that again. The $5 million.
That'd be great if it was 5,000. I'll take that.
At the bottom, can you just, I understand mathematically how you got there, but could
Yeah.
you explain exactly what it represents?
Yes, what we do, what we're looking at there is we're looking at if we were to just increase our expense budget by the additional revenue that we're securing from the local levy, then what the shortfall would be. Now, we're in a good position this year, but it's something that we keep a very close eye on in regards to that. And the amount that you see there, keep in mind, you know, we're looking at a $237 million budget. We deal with really big numbers. That's actually a very manageable budget for what we anticipate having remaining at the end of this budget year and being able to roll then into the next year to refund our taxpayers for their support.
So this would be the total that you anticipate using from the funded, from the operation account?
From the fund balance, yes.
Fund balance, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that
Yes.
makes so much sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have a question as well, and then Dr. Eckers. You mentioned that we will not need a tax anticipation bond this year, and it's going to save a few $100,000, which is very nice. A note, I'm sorry. So what if we use those? What are those used for in the past? Why don't we need it this year as well?
It really is when you get into cash flow issues. We haven't had to access that too often. In the 7 years where I've been in this current position developing budgets, we've had 1 year where the cash flow was tight enough that we needed to do a tax anticipation note. Now with the additional funds still coming in and our current financial condition, looking forward at our cash flow, we don't see that as being a need. I'd still think that we should keep the line open and have money there to fund because, again, you know, we have to look at all scenarios. But I don't think that what we had normally put in there would be necessary for this coming year.
And that that shortfall or money that we would need is because we wouldn't have received the actual tax payments from the government to cover our costs, right? Those payments were delayed.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned that because I do this all day, so I'm in my own little world with this. The way that we get our tax payments, we do get a schedule. And as payrolls hit, you know, obviously the funds that we have available will go up and down. And depending on when that schedule hits, we do a cash flow projection to see where there may be trouble points. And we'll actually go and have this professionally done. It's something that we do are tracking here readily. And where we see concerns, if you don't identify the concern before, it's too late. So we're identifying these concerns months down the line. That's why. So that's what I'm talking about when I say cash flow projection. Are we going to be able to be in a strong position during each one of these cycles where we do have that reduction when the pay periods hit?
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Just in monitoring our capital projects, I know this year we've had some capital projects. We're doing some great projects, but I know they're not all completed yet. What is the timeline within a budget for the completion of a capital project?
I really have to give you multiple answers there. If you were to do a capital project that required state approval, say the projects for this year, if there was a project that required state approval, we would have to develop with the architect the proper documentation and submit the project to the state. We start out with a basic letter of intent, go through the entire process. It goes through all the engineering reviews. Keeping in mind, in effect, New York State is basically our building department. So it would be the same thing. They're doing the same function that the town would do if you were looking to do an extension on your house. So it's all vetted out. Not only is it stamped by our architect, but their architect also. So you have redundancy involved. So a larger project, you're looking at approval periods sometimes of up to 50 weeks. Now, we have no control over that. That goes up to the state. So you would most often do a capital project that requires state approval, be done a full year later. Those projects also you'll gain aid on. So we gain our aid ratio of 58%. We would gain that aid back, usually straight line over 15 years. That's why it's so important to make sure that you track projects appropriately, and it's something that we have many redundancies in and that we keep a very close eye on. Now, flipping the other way, a project that does not need to go to the state, which would be something that you wouldn't be changing the building, the layout of a building. You wouldn't be dealing with a major ventilation project, maybe site work, doing sidewalks, things like that. That you would be able to act on in the summer after the budget's approved, weather permitting. And sometimes every school district is roughly the same schedule. You would then in the fall still be doing projects such as that, which you'd get into different play areas, asphalt, cement, things like that, and that would be done over the summer and into the early fall. So that's basically where you would land at. And you also keep in mind, though, currently we're completing the bond projects. We are in the process of doing the energy performance bond contracts. So we have a lot of different moving pieces going on simultaneously at this point.
Thank you for the update.
Dr. Pizzo, just to hop on to Dr. Ecker's question, so that the community understands, I know you said the outside range of how long the state would take to get back to us with one of these proposals is 50 weeks. Can you give us a sense of what the range could be?
It all depends. A lot of it has to do with their staffing. And they have, for many years, been understaffed. There's also issues with the state not being fully operational like we are. A lot of them are still remote. So that all feeds into it. Also, another thing that feeds into this is how many districts are really looking to do construction? What are the market conditions? And if it's anything else like with supply and demand, how things work, you're going to have if you have many projects going in, it's going to slow down that timeline. They're not going to bring in extra people because of that. It just extends the timeline. So it's gotten down to as brief, and brief is really maybe not the right word, is maybe 20 weeks, 27 weeks. But it keeps floating back up to 50 again. So I like to give the outside of the range, and let's hope for better. But unfortunately, it's been closer to the top end of that range and not the bottom.
I have one question. So just to kind of, finish it up and bring it home, once we get state approval, what's the next step, bringing it back to the district?
Okay, once we get state approval and we're able to go out to bid, we're going to need to go out to bid.
I'm sorry,
at
Dr.
that-
Pizzo. We are having a difficult time hearing Dr. Pizzo. If we could please ask the murmuring to be kept to a minimum so we can do our business. Thank you.
All right, we have, so once we have approval, we will do a bid. The bid, we do have the participation of our district architect, because especially when we're doing construction, well, I'm involved in construction, our facilities people are experts in construction. They don't have the unique skill set of an architect. So in partnership with the architect, they'll have the plans, the specifications, and we'll go through that formal process of bidding and then awarding the work. And awarding the work, it's all about making sure it's a qualified vendor and that they have the appropriate securities and have met the different requirements that we placed within the bid. And then after that, we're really looking to go. So we would, if we had approval from like a project this year, in March of next year, we would be going through this process in April, looking to gear up as soon as school closed to take advantage of the availability of the buildings.
Sure.
I want to circle back to a question that Dr. Pizzo asked regarding projects such as site work. Are there ever any instances where when we budget for site work, we're unable to complete that project within that calendar year or that budget year? And if so, what would be some of the things that would prevent us from moving forward with a project where a site work project that was approved this year will fall into the next budget cycle?
And thank you, Dr. Carr. That is actually a great question. Aidable projects are required to be within the envelope of a school building. Okay, when the state's looking to do aid, they want to aid something that's going to go to kids. Parking lot is not something that is considered to go to kids, although obviously we need to get our teachers into the building. So I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but they were looking for that direct. So if we were doing a project at a building where we had an interior project that was aidable and an exterior project that was not aidable, if we merge it into one project, we could make the entire project aidable. And now we have, with the delay by a year, some of that work that we could have done otherwise, but without foregoing that aid, we get a lot more value for what we're doing. So that would be the most prevalent scenario that I can see in that regard. We do have sometimes with contractors that post-COVID, we did have a difficult time with contractors, and there were some delays there where projects did go a little bit longer. But one thing we won't do is rush to get something done and not get value. So I think value is more important than, after a project's done, nobody remembers if it was done in August or if it was done over a break in November. But if the job's done wrong and there's problems later, that's what people will remember, and that's where our focus is getting it done right.
One final question before we move on. I think earlier you stated that school districts were required to submit to the state their tax cap calculation by a particular date. So at this point, all school districts in Nassau County and Suffolk County have submitted their tax cap calculations, and we probably received a run telling us where we fall. So in relationship to the 127 plus school districts in Suffolk and Nassau, whereabouts are we falling in terms of our allowable tax cap levy?
I'd say we're comfortably in the middle. I did see a wider range than I anticipated, and this is a issue that we collect this. The business officials collect it, superintendents collect this information, and we put this together and share it. So we do have almost all of the information in at this point, and it's been shared within our groups. But yeah, we're comfortably in the middle at this point from from what I've observed with the documentation I've been able to get a hold of and review.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pizzo.
Thank
We're
you.
going to move on now to policy. Mr. Russo?
Thank you. Excuse me. So, so we do have a second reading of policy 1405, complaints about certain federally funded employees. This is a new policy, and the policy basically outlines the process for someone to follow in order to file a complaint regarding the district's federally funded programs. Tonight does represent a second reading of the policy, and if approved by the Board of Education, then the changes do become part of the policy manual. Well, actually, the policy becomes part of the policy manual.
Thank you so much, Mr. Russo. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve policy 1405, complaints about certain federally funded programs? Dr. Liu, second. Ms. Widman, any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to confirm, there was no change from our first reading at the last meeting, correct?
No, there was no changes.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Would you like to move on to?
Yes, so we, in addition, we do have a first reading of policy 8411, transportation for students in foster care. This is a new policy, and the policy addresses the process the district will follow when providing transportation for students who are in foster care. So tonight does represent a first reading of the policy, and we'll be having a second reading on March 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Russo. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve consent agenda item E1? Dr. Liu, second. Dr. Eckers, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items F1 through F18? Ms. Tell, second. Dr. Luce, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate all of the newly tenured teachers and school-related personnel. We hope that you have a very long and meaningful career in the East Meadow School District, so thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items G1 through G15? Ms. Napolitano, second. Ms. Widman, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. So with that, we actually just approved 2 new scholarships, which will be awarded to Clark High School students. And my understanding, I believe, is that they will begin this year, if I read correctly. So we are very thankful always, anytime that we add new scholarships. Thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the custodial overtime report? Excuse me, the facilities items H1 and H2, which includes the custodial overtime report. Ms. Napolitano, second. Dr. Eckers, any discussion?
I just want to say that, I just want to say there's a very good trend here that I see. It's really nice that we're obviously on the correct trend in terms of our spending there, and I hope that that continues, so thank you.
I agree, thank you. All in favor? 7-0. That brings us to our public commentary second period. Just as a reminder for anybody who may not have been here when I spoke about public commentary, we allot a half an hour to public commentary. Each blue card that is given in will entitle the person to speak for 3 minutes. It does not have to be on items on tonight's agenda. It can be on any items related to school. Once again, it is not a question and answer period. We will not be answering questions, but we will write down and make sure that you are contacted, provided you gave us your contact information, not everybody has, you with the answers in the coming days. So we will start, okay. We will start right now. Mr. Anthony D. I'm just going to put it down for 8 o'clock. It's close enough. Yeah.
Hello. As everyone is aware, taxes, excuse me? As everyone is aware, taxes, especially school taxes in Nassau, are extremely, even criminally high. What is required, or what can be done for those without kids in the school system or any longer to not have to pay school tax, which comprises 65 to 75% of the total property tax bill? Now, there are 50 separate school districts in Nassau. Is that true? Around 50? 56, each with its own superintendent and administrations, purchasing budgets, which means there's inherent corruption and waste with no cost savings for the residents. The teachers and administrative salaries are too high. They work from 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 with breaks, have 3 months off, including vacations and holidays, have taxpayer-funded pension plans, use the same lesson plans over and over again. Now, year after year, same lesson plans. Where in the private sector do you find such compensation for such little innovation and productivity? Now, they do not teach how to think, they teach what to think. And they indoctrinate the young into a degenerate woke agenda. This while claiming cover, it's for the kids, which is theft in the name of education, and it equals child abuse. All this we are forced to fund by a criminal government monopoly on violence for a service that we do not or no longer use and services political patronage. You know, the Pledge of Allegiance, this is supposed to be a republic, not a democracy. There's a difference, you know? The difference is the rights of the minority are supposed to be protected if it's according to the law. I'm pretty sure, according to the law of this country, you can't force somebody at gunpoint to pay for something they don't use. You know, they have RICO statutes for that. You know, it just doesn't apply to them. Doesn't apply to the bureaucracy, does it? Anyway, that's
Thank you,
what I have to
Mr.
say.
Anthony D.
Yes.
Ms. Benowitz? Ms. Benowitz?
Oh, I have a fan club. I'm sorry, I'm just getting to the beginning. I am here tonight as a parent, a community member, a member of the PTA Advocacy Committee, and moreover, I am here to be a voice for thousands of children that cannot speak for themselves. A loss for words does not begin to cover how I feel. The context of the video recording of our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Casametto.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to take away any of your time. I just need to interrupt for 1 second. Due to personnel matters, you can absolutely mention the situation. We ask that you don't mention the name, please.
Covert operations, taking power from people, creating rubrics for not hiring those types of people, secrecy, collusion, the list goes on. Moreover, not only are his comments evidence of corruption, his pride and compliance, as he revealed his systematic corruption over public funds towards his personal agenda, is irreprehensible. In fact, it is morally repugnant. His words and actions speak to the district at large, including you, the Board of Ed. As all of you, this is going on under your watch. Hiring process, staff, and curricular decisions, the education of our children, everything. Anybody hired under his eye ought to be scrutinized, and all hiring in the district should be put on hold until the process is reviewed. I ask you, the board, what is your plan with dealing with he who shall not be named and the damage done to both our schools and the public trust? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benowitz. Mrs. Yohei?
Hello, everybody. You did state before that the Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Casimiento, his actions will be investigated. Can you clarify and confirm that there will be an investigation into him specifically and when that will be available for us, whether it's a board meeting or via an email? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yohei. Joy?
Hello. So from what I hear, I traveled all the way to Queens for this. So understand, Nassau, the city has your back. Yes. I'm actually a fired New York City Department of Education paraprofessional, and the last 2 years was spent making sure that none of this ever happens again. But from what I understand from that video, which I actually got to see today, and I'm going to demonstrate something to you so that it's on the public record for everyone in Nassau. I want to tell you that my history doesn't need to be taught in school. Who I am, where my family comes from, who we are and what we represent needs not to be taught in school. I believe that that is up to the families, no matter where that family comes from, no matter who they are and what they represent. I am a proud first-generation Colombian, third-generation Puerto Rican. Who I am and what I represent, who I am and where I'm from, doesn't need to be taught in schools by people that use my culture, who I am, as a political production, to be enforced, indoctrinated, and placed on these children. Now, we live in a republic, and I think that's where we're lost, that this is a democracy. We are not a democracy, as was stated earlier, and I'm glad it's going to be on the record to be on the record again. We are a republic. Any harm comes to one, we have an issue. We are not mob rule, majority rule, and what happens here in these places is we think that majority rules. If one child is harmed, if one parent is harmed, if one mother, one father, one son or daughter, anyone is harmed by any one of you, would you hold a seat and have to uphold the law? Especially with these children in these educational institutions that are now indoctrinational camps, you will be held accountable. You will be held accountable. You will be held accountable. Every single seat and every single job. I see very, very good men and women out here that want to protect their sons and daughters and their legacy, their offspring, their bloodlines. They will take your seats. They will take your seats. So this is not a threat. This is just an introduction that the men and women living in the land of New York will take back everything that is theirs, because that is how this republic started. So as you can see, I probably have about 30 seconds left. To the men and women of Nassau, I believe in you. If you want to know about more, I'm sorry, I got to remove this because I'm a public speaker. I've been doing this for 2 years. If you need help, if you want education and you want help, you can see me. You can see my brother right there, Dio. We can get you the education needed in order to take back your schools, because these are your schools. These are your schools. These are your schools.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy.
And with that, I yield.
Mr. Holman?
That is going to be hard to follow up, but good job, Joy. No, man, I'll take it, man. Any shots are good. Hey, there was a email that went out. There was an email that went out in January from the aforementioned David Casamento to share an opportunity. He writes, I have been asked to share an opportunity to attend the LGBT Teach Ed Camp on March 4th from 8:30 to 2:20 at H.B. Thompson Middle School in Syosset. Teachers can use attendance at this event towards their 3 additional hours of contractual professional development. The link and the registration links are below. So that's coercive. And he's trying to find out who's on his team, you know? Because in the video done by Project Veritas, he goes, minute 3:56, you chip away. You stop their ends. You stop hiring those type of people, conservatives. You kind of got to be a little coy about that. That's slimy. That's devious. That's backhanded. That is. Then he says, we need good people. Who are the good people? We're not good people? Conservatives aren't good people? We don't care about our kids? We care every bit about our kids. Then he says, Project Veritas, 41 seconds in. Do you encourage your teachers to write a curriculum advancing in DEI? 50 seconds in, Mr. Casamento says, nodding in approval. Yes, covertly. Every district in Nassau County is doing it. Covertly. Except for the black population. Really? That's interesting. And he leads off. My sexual identity was always part of my work because I believe in making connections with kids. Now, what is that all about? I have been a coach. I've been a coach for 20 years. I've never had to use my sexual identity to connect with a kid. What kind of people are you hiring here? It's sickening. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Mr. Mann? Mr. Mann?
Hello. Am I talking into the mic okay? All right. So there was a lot that happened in the video that everybody's here to talk about, and I am not here to defend any of it. That is not my business. There is something that is a part of the discussion that I fear outside of today's information is something that is always broadly misunderstood. And so I just wanted to address it because I think there's something important that is assumed, maybe not accurately. My name is Ethan Mann. I'm an East Meadow parent. I'm also a former school guidance counselor. And the reason I mention that is because learning how to be a school guidance counselor taught me something about schools. The job of teachers, the job of a school is to educate, not to indoctrinate, not to any of these other things, but it is to educate. But I also learned that the job of a guidance counselor is to realize that not every student is available for learning. If you are hungry, if you are abused, if you are homeless, it is harder to learn math. And so my understanding, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm simply expressing my understanding. My understanding of DEI, of the entire idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion is as follows, and I'm reading something right now off of the New York Education website. New York State Education Department understands culture as being everything about a young person, everything about a person, not limited to race, economic background, gender, language, sexual orientation, etc. So that is a child's culture. It also says that from the perspective of understanding this, learning is rooted in the lives and experiences of people and cultivated through activities that people find meaningful. When teaching is not rooted in students' lives, student learning suffers. What does this say to me? It does not say that a gay teacher should make his or her children gay. It does not say to me that somebody should use their sexuality to influence or teach. But what it does say to me is that there needs to be representation so that students are available for learning. If somebody is gay and comes into 12 years of an environment where every example of every word and every expression and every way things are discussed and every example in every math book is of a white married couple, and I chose white on purpose, then there's nothing wrong with that. That is still the teaching of math. But as we are told in this belief by New York State, if you don't see your culture and yourself and your personhood at some point validated, at some point represented, you're not available for learning. You're not going to get the math because you're too focused on, I don't belong here, should I even bother living, am I okay? So I am not saying that teachers should be getting involved in the middle of math and counseling and working kids on their personal issues.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
Can I finish one sentence?
I'm sorry, I have
That's
to.
fine.
I have to limit.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Mrs. Perez. Mrs. Perez? I'm sorry, I thought it was on.
Hello, everyone. Everyone's here for the video. I could say that everyone, especially myself, seems to be a little upset and disturbed about, yes, diversity, inclusiveness, everybody wants to be included, everybody wants to be picked at sports, everybody doesn't want to be picked last, everybody wants to be invited, everyone wants to have friends. But it seems that the assistant superintendent is choosing people that he feels that he wants to work in his schools to, I'm going to say, indoctrinate what he feels is the best learning for his children, which is not conservative values, which I don't know how he would know who's a conservative or not, but if you watch the video, it tells you how he sees who's a conservative or not. So let's see what we want here. And PV Journalist, which is Project Verasha, says, how do you do that? He says, because you'll hear about the way they answer a question. They answer a question. If they talk about kids in a not great light, you are like, no, you can't come here. What does that even mean? Talk about a kid in a not great light. Who talks about kids bad, first of all, that wants to be in an education system? What parent has children, especially multiple children, and then just talks bad about them? So I don't know who they are. That's one of my questions. I wish he was here tonight because I would love some answers to a lot of these statements that it would really help us out here. So basically, next, PV asked, if you had a conservative candidate and you figured it out right away, you figured it out like it's a big secret, what would happen? I would rank. We do everything by committee. I don't know if it's 7-0 committee, but it does say committee. I get a vote on that committee. It's all secret. He said the word secret. Why secret? I would rank them so low that their score couldn't possibly raise them up to the level moving on to the cabinet. He would rank them so low. Now, there are so many tests that these kids take on a daily basis that we don't know about, okay? Now, if you know that a parent is a conservative, and a child is a child of a conservative parent, would you rank them so low that they couldn't get to the next grade?
Thank you, Mrs. Perez. Thank you.
I'd like another 3 minutes if there's left over, please.
I don't think there will be, but I will keep that in mind. Thank you.
March 22nd.
Yes. Jeff Pleiss, and I apologize if I said that wrong. Jeff Pleiss? No? Okay. I'll put that over here. I'm sorry? No. Mr. Mack.
Kevin McKenna. Again, if you want to follow this, you can go on Nassau County NY News on Facebook. Miss Baroque, I have a team of attorneys. You, earlier, violated my right to free speech, okay? I did not bring up the name of the assistant superintendent, which right now, everybody on Long Island, if not New York, knows his name, but you don't want to say his name, okay? If you apologize to me for violating my right to speech, okay, in the second public comment, you allowed a resident to do exactly what I was trying to do. Now, apparently you were counseled after the first public comment. You violated my right to free speech. If you apologize to me, I will not take legal action. Now, let me continue. You could ponder that, okay? In the Veritas report, I want to reiterate that the assistant superintendent, that we won't say his name, on video, on audio, he admitted that you're looking for conservatives and that you want to weed them out. Now, you earlier in your opening comments, you opened the door and you said that he worked with people on the committee. So who else participated in that illegal act by the assistant superintendent? Who else is on that committee? And who else? And I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing. That's why I speak loud. Really, I have a hearing problem. That's why I speak loud. Who else is on that committee that also needs to be reprimanded, if not terminated, from this East Meadow School District? Who else is on that committee?
Are you finished, Mr.
No, I'm not.
McKenna?
No, it's actually McKenna, but I cut it short and I said Mac. I didn't want you to know my name. And I also want to, on the behalf of these East Meadow residents that pay extremely high taxes, I want you to know that the water fountain in the hall does not work. And you should be very, very proud of that. Maybe you need to add a line item on your budget to fix the water fountains in the East Meadow School District.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Pobliner?
Good evening. So I'm going to voice my opinion. I think the video is grimy. What the assistant superintendent said was ill-advised. But I think that it's important that we use this opportunity to move things forward. And what I mean by that is there are certain things that are inherent in this system, whether it be educational, political, social, what have you, that need to be spotlighted. Something like diversity, equanimity, inclusiveness is not a bad thing. It teaches our children that the mistakes that we have made as a country can be fixed. And it takes learning, and it takes a hard look at yourself in the mirror to be able to do that. This is not about turning people gay, turning kids gay. Calling this gentleman a pedophile is reprehensible, all right? Because when I was in high school, I had friends that put razor blades to wrist because they were gay and they got tortured and they had no one to go to. So yeah, if my child winds up being gay or non-binary, whatever, and finds a teacher that she can relate to, good. Good. It's not about pushing it on every child. It is about teaching. It is about teaching that no matter who you are, you have a right to be accepted. You have a right not to live your life in fear or in the shadows. And anybody who disagrees with that, whether it be liberal, conservative, fascist, is wrong. Our children are the most important part of our future. And it starts by correcting the mistakes that this country has made. And if that means looking at the inherent racism in the system, so be it. If you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, don't blame the mirror.
Thank you, Mr. Kobliner. Mr. Tempone, Mr. Tempone, I'm sorry, you had mentioned that you wanted to come back. I don't have a second card from you. It's not a problem. I just want to know whether or not you want to speak. Okay.
All right. So just so that everyone on the board knows, because, you know, I don't know if you guys, whatever, live in a little cocoon, but Project Veritas, the good people at Project Veritas on just one social media platform have over 460,000 followers. Compound that, you guys are all mathematicians. Compound that, this isn't just a New York thing. This is something that's happening all over the country. These two have been fighting the whole time. It's really aggravating. So I'm a coach, just like the gentleman that spoke before. I'll talk over them. Hey, do me a favor.
No,
Could we have
I'm sorry.
security in the auditorium, please?
We represent
Security
children.
in the auditorium.
Right.
So please.
Am I losing my time here?
We're not. Your time is paused. It's. Excuse me. Where is the?
It's a great answer.
I appreciate your patience, Mr. Tempone. Oh, twice? Yeah. Okay. All right. You know what? We'll give the last two, even though it's only a half hour. That's fine. Right? Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ready? All right, we're back. So this is going to spread far and wide, right? Okay. That being said, if this wasn't a school district, if this was a private business, the person who's allowed to live his life however he sees fit outside of these four walls, no one cares, honestly. No one really cares. But he did violate, I'm a coach, been a coach for a long time like the other gentleman, he has essentially violated a safe sport rule. If that gentleman was in my locker room, right, he would be reported to Safe Sport, and they would launch an investigation on him, 100%, for his comments, not for the way he lives. But that said, Mr. Card, one of your subordinates has been wrapped up in this. I think it's time, and I know you're going at the end of the year. It was the best email I got when you were leaving. But you should resign And all of the people on this board that forced that one conservative member out, I'm not going to mention any names, that forced her out, all of you should be ashamed of yourselves. Because if you want to live in an echo chamber, it's one of the most dangerous places to live in. And that's what this room is. This room is an echo chamber. You guys should all resign. You should all be replaced immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tempone. My understanding is that Mr. Pleiss, or Place. Pleiss.
Okay, thank you. Such an exciting meeting. Okay, you could address me as Jeff Pleiss. Tonight, I'm going to identify myself as Jeff Pleiss, and I have a PhD, and I also am an attorney. So you will now, from this point forward, address me as Dr. Pleiss Esquire, because that's what I identify as. Now, I'm going to tell you guys this. We're going to play a little educational game for you guys. I want you guys up there, whoever has been in East Meadow since 1960, to raise your hand. Anybody? Congratulations. My grandfather bought a house in East Meadow on a GI loan in 1960. My mother and father, 1949, he bought the house, brand new. My mother graduated in 1963. My father graduated in 1960. I'm going to tell you guys this. If you think that this board meeting is a circus now, you do not want me returning, all right? Now, I've been a school security technology expert since before Columbine in 1999. And I'm going to tell you, okay, people have now woken up. It took COVID to wake people up. Now, all of you, people want to believe that all of you are for the children, okay? I've been working in schools for many, many years. I even worked in Roslyn before the scandal, okay? So I'm going to just say this. Part of school security has to do with not having people like that individual, who I'm not going to name, working in the district. Not only that, I've seen districts cover up sexual abuse underneath the name as in we don't want to know. But not only that, for some reasons, when female teachers fool around with male students, that's all right. Or when a female gay woman fools around with a female student, she doesn't get charged with statutory rape, all right? And I've seen it in many districts on what goes on. So you guys, as far as I'm concerned, you're cut from the same cloth. You go to the superintendent's conferences. When did you go to the last Nassau County Superintendent Conference? Huh? You go to the Nassau County Board of Education conferences. What you guys are doing is what's going to happen eventually is all you guys, the administrative seats with your secretaries and your offices, gone. Your offices converted back to school classrooms. What's going to happen is you could keep your local control, you could keep your local board members, but all your administration, gone. Nassau County Public Schools with their administrators, their board members, and that's it. If I have a problem with my kid, I go to that director. If then there's another problem, if I'm not satisfied, I go to the principal. Then if I'm not satisfied, I go to my local board, and then if I'm not satisfied, I go to Nassau County Public Schools superintendent of personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Pleiss.
Your positions are going to be eliminated eventually.
Thank you, Mr. Pleiss. And our last card, Ms. Piazza.
So first I want to commend my fan club here who knows me and I have no idea who they are, so thank you. I didn't prepare anything. I have never heard of Veritas before until my nephew actually sent me the video. I stood beside almost all of you years ago outside of McVeigh, supported your positions here, helped you get here, and continue to vote you in. You are all culpable. He did not do this in a silo. It is disgraceful. It is absolutely disgraceful. You are culpable and the rest of you, because he didn't do this alone. He didn't make these hiring or not hiring decisions on his own. I support DEA. I support kindness. I support anti-bullying. I support all the merits that education is supposed to be a part of. What he did was try to isolate and discriminate. I am not a conservative. My family that's here knows I'm not. We don't agree. You all who know me, who didn't text me today, like you do when I post on East Meadow Opt Out, which I knew this was going to be an exciting meeting, so of course I wanted to show up for it. What am I seeing here? I'm seeing the sins of the past. You are going to go out in a ball of flames, just like D'Angelo and Campo did, and then you all will be picked off one by one if you don't support the liberal parents, the conservative parents, and put the children first. You put the children first. You don't cover up. We're a laughing stock on News 12. We're being investigated for what? Overages being paid to the janitors, and now the person that heads up our curriculum, for Pete's sake, is on video? Why? Why? It took 10 years to recoup this district. And what are you all doing? It's running into the ground. Running into the ground. Again, we're going back to where we were 10 years ago. You're a parent. 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 You are not. You are. You are. If you are doing what's in the best interest of the children, this needs to turn over again, or you all need to look in the mirror.
Thank you, Mrs. Piazza. Does any board member have any closing announcements? Nope. Would somebody like to make a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation, collective bargaining matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person? Dr. Eckers, second. Dr. Luce, any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. We will be back on